He watches her on the security feed every night, not for protection, but for the single moment her perfect composure breaks. Tonight, she thinks he's finally dismissing her for good. She stands on the tarmac, tears on her cheeks, believing it's over. But in his hand, he's not holding a termination notice. He's holding a passport, a boarding pass, and a one-way ticket to a life she never dared to imagine. His name is Kim Jun, a soul-born kingpin who built an empire on calculated ruthlessness. Her name is Maya, a former dancer whose world shattered in a single moment. This is about what happens when the most guarded man in the city hires the woman with nothing left to lose, and why that single, watched moment threatened to unravel them both. It begins with an accident, not the one that broke her body, but the one that placed her resume on his desk. 6 months before the private jet, Maya was in the spotlight, not on a tarmac. Her body was her instrument, and she played it at the level of a virtuoso. As a principal dancer with the Metropolitan Contemporary Ballet, she was the one others watched. Critics called her movement liquid electricity. Her career was a straight, luminous line upward. Then, on a rainy Thursday in November, the line snapped. She was crossing Broadway after a late rehearsal. A delivery van, its driver distracted, ran a red light. The impact shattered her right knee and fractured her tibia in 3 places. The surgeries that followed were called successful because she would walk. But for a dancer, that's a different kind of death sentence. The doctor's words were gentle and absolute. The damage is too extensive. You will not dance professionally again. Her entire identity, built since she was 4 years old, evaporated in that sterile room. Her fiancé, a graphic designer named David, tried to be supportive for 3 months. Then, as the medical bills piled up and the woman he loved retreated into a shell of grief and anger, he left. He took his things and the future they'd planned. The apartment lease was in his name. Suddenly, Maya was not just a former dancer, but a homeless one. She couch-surfed, sold her dancewear, and watched her savings drain to double digits. The job listing appeared on her cracked phone screen like a mirage. Live-in personal assistant, discretion required, generous compensation. The salary was listed as $15,000 a month, an obvious typo or a trap. But when your bank balance reads $87, you click. The interview was in a bland midtown office. The man, Mr. Choi, asked unsettling questions. Do you have close family? Are you prone to curiosity about matters that don't concern you? Can you follow instructions without requiring explanations? Each question felt like a door closing between her and the normal world. She answered yes, no, and yes. Desperation makes an excellent negotiator. She was hired on the spot. A car collected her the next Monday. It drove to the base of a shimmering tower in Lower Manhattan, a building known for its billionaire residents and unparalleled security. The private elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The space was a study in silent luxury, all cool marble, glass, and emptiness. And there he was. Kim Jun stood facing the wall of windows, the skyline at his back. He didn't turn immediately. "Miss Reed," he said, his voice low and devoid of warmth. "I have reviewed your situation. The drunk driver who hit you received probation. The system failed you." Finally, he turned. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, with an intensity that made the large room feel small. "I do not tolerate failure in my operations. You will find I correct imbalances." He explained her duties, managing the household, which consisted of this vast, empty apartment, preparing meals he often wouldn't eat, and being invisibly efficient. "Your quarters are there," he gestured to a hallway. "This room," he pointed to a sealed door with a keypad, "is never entered, never approached. To do so is to terminate our arrangement immediately." He offered no threat of violence, only the certainty of expulsion. To Maya, who had nowhere to go, that was threat enough. The first week was a ghostly routine. She moved through the immaculate space, cleaning surfaces that were already clean, cooking meals that were left untouched. Kim Jun was a shadow, coming and going at odd hours, speaking in Korean on his phone, his presence a ripple of tension in the still air. He acknowledged her with nods, nothing more. She felt like a museum curator for a prison no one visited. Then on the 8th night she broke. The silence was too heavy. In the privacy of her room, she put on her old rehearsal playlist. The first notes of a contemporary piece, one she'd performed to acclaim, filled the space. Without thinking, her body responded. A simple port de bras, arms flowing through the positions. Then a shift of weight, a gentle tilt. Pain shot through her rebuilt knee, sharp and bright. She gasped, stumbling, and caught herself on the dresser. A soft, defeated sob escaped her. She stood there, forehead against the cool wood, for a full minute, wrestling the wave of grief back into its cage. She thought she was alone. She was wrong. In his office, behind the forbidden door, Kim Jun watched a black and white security feed. He saw the stumble, the caught sob, the fierce battle for composure. A strange tension settled in his jaw. He had hired her because her desperation made her predictable, because her lack of connections made her safe. He had not hired her to witness this quiet, ferocious war against despair. It was a vulnerability, and in his world, vulnerability was a liability. He should have looked away. He didn't. He replayed the clip, just once. The next morning, a small, unmarked package was delivered. Maya opened it to find a high-grade compression sleeve for her knee, the kind used by elite athletes. There was no note. The message was clear: your performance matters, your weakness does not. It was the first crack in the wall between them, and neither knew it would bring the whole structure down. Because Kim Jun had problems bigger than a housekeeper's tears. A rival syndicate was moving in on his territory. A shipment had been intercepted. There was talk of betrayal within his own ranks. The pressure was building, and in his experience, pressure always found the weakest point. He just didn't realize yet that his weakest point was no longer a business asset. It was the woman in the other wing, who was starting to notice the strange men arriving after midnight, and the way Kim Jun's eyes, when they briefly met hers, now held a question he wouldn't dare ask. The question in his eyes was answered by a business card, left carelessly on his desk. It was for a boutique physical therapy clinic, one specializing in complex dance injuries, circled in red ink. She found it while dusting, a breach of protocol that made her heart stutter. She placed it back exactly as it was, but the message was received. A week later, without discussion, a therapist named Lena arrived at the penthouse. Mr. Kim arranged a consultation, the woman said, her smile kind. Shall we assess what's possible? It was the first outright acknowledgement that he saw her as more than functional furniture. The sessions were painful, hopeful, and private. Lena came twice a week. Kim Jun was never present, but a thermos of medicinal tea would appear outside Maya's door on therapy nights. Their communication became a silent language of small accommodations. She noticed he favored a particular brand of pen and made sure they were always stocked. He, in turn, had the harsh lighting in her bathroom replaced with softer bulbs, easier on her chronic headaches. Meanwhile, his world grew louder. The midnight meetings increased, voices raised behind the closed door of his office, sometimes in Korean, sometimes in tense, fractured English. One morning, she found a smear of blood on the marble floor near the elevator. She cleaned it without a word. That afternoon, a new security system was installed, with keypads on every interior door. She began to piece it together from fragments. A name mentioned in anger, Kang, a city, Busan, the term port authorities. She understood organized crime in the abstract way anyone does from headlines. But this was the smell of cordite lingering in the foyer, the way his men now scanned the hallway before he exited the elevator. This was real. Her old life tried to reconnect. Her former dance partner, Chloe, tracked her down through a mutual friend. They met at a cafe, and for an hour, Maya almost felt normal. "We miss you," Chloe said. "There's a community center in Brooklyn. They do adaptive dance for injured performers. You should see it." She pressed a flyer into Maya's hand. For a moment, Maya saw a glimmer of a different path, one that didn't end in this gilded, dangerous cage. When she returned to the penthouse, Kim was waiting in the living room, his posture rigid. "You were followed," he stated, his voice like cut glass. "What? No, I was just—" "A gray sedan, two men. They noted the time you entered the cafe and left." He took a step closer, and for the first time she saw genuine alarm in his eyes, not just calculation. "You cannot be predictable, Maya, not now." The use of her first name stunned her more than the warning. Who were they? Assets of a man named Kang Min-suk. He believes applying pressure to my personal sphere will make me amenable to a business discussion. He walked to the window, his back to her. He is incorrect, but his methods are not subtle. Personal sphere. The words hung in the air. She was no longer just an employee, she was a point of leverage. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, a strange calm settled over her. She finally understood the rules of this new game. What do you need me to do? He turned, surprised by her tone. Stay inside. Vary your routines if you must go out. The man who drives you, Park, is former Special Forces. Trust him. And you, she asked. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, there and gone. I will make Mr. Kang understand the cost of his curiosity. The following days were a tense ceasefire. Kim was gone more often, returning at all hours looking drained but focused. Maya used the time to research the community center momentum. She watched videos of their classes, of dancers with prostheses and braces moving with breathtaking artistry. It felt like a lifeline thrown from the shore of her old world. She also researched Kang Min-suk. The results were a series of news articles from Seoul about corporate fraud, acquittals, and suspected ties to organized gambling rings. A clean, dangerous man. The threat now had a face and a resume. One evening, a storm lashed against the penthouse windows, knocking out power to the grid. The emergency generators hummed to life, casting the vast space in dim, emergency lighting. Maya lit candles, the old dance habit of creating atmosphere. She was arranging them when Kim returned, soaked from the rain, a cut on his cheekbone. Without thinking, she fetched the first aid kit. Sit, she said, her voice brooking no argument. He did, watching her silently as she cleaned the cut. The intimacy of the act in the flickering candlelight was more profound than any conversation. It was a meeting, he said quietly, as if answering a question she hadn't asked. Not violent, persuasive. The other party was unconvinced by my arguments. A car door was closed with enthusiasm. She smiled slightly at the understatement. Did they become convinced? They will. He was quiet for a moment. The silence in here, during the blackout, it reminds me of the mountains near Sokcho, where I was sent as a boy after my father died. Too quiet for a city kid. It was the first piece of personal history he'd ever offered. She finished with the bandage, her fingers lingering for a second on his temple. Why were you sent away? My father's business partners thought it was safer. They were likely right. He didn't elaborate, but the confession opened a door. This center you are researching, momentum, it is a good thing. The change of subject startled her. How did you? Your laptop is on the penthouse network, he said simply, no apology in his tone. Is it a good thing? Yes, she said, sitting back. It's about reclaiming what you love in a new form, not giving up. He nodded slowly. This is a philosophy I am trying to understand. He stood, looking out at the storm-ravaged city. My father built a legacy of control, of taking what was needed. I have expanded that, but I find myself, he searched for the word, curious about building something that is not taken from someone else. This was the pivot, the revelation that the ruthless kingpin harbored a seed of doubt, a desire for something legitimate. It reframed everything. His interest in her wasn't just surveillance, it was study. He was watching her rebuild and wondering if he could do the same. You could, she said softly. He looked at her then, his face half in shadow. It is not so simple. The world I am in does not allow for clean exits. Neither does a shattered knee, she replied. You adapt or you stop moving. The power surged back on, flooding the room with blinding light. The moment broke. He was Mr. Kim again, the inscrutable employer. Thank you for the medical attention, he said formally. I will be in my office. But the next day, a printed email appeared beside her breakfast plate. It was a confirmation for a guest pass to Momentum's open house in her name. No note. She went. The experience was emotional and overwhelming. She saw herself in the determined faces of the other dancers. She spoke with the director, Elijah, who recognized her name from her professional career. "We could use someone with your expertise," he said, "even part-time." For the first time since the accident, she felt a professional purpose reignite. When Kim's car picked her up, she was buzzing with an energy he hadn't seen before. "Well?" he asked as she slid in beside him. He had come himself. "It was," she struggled for the word, "possible. They offered me a teaching position, 2 evenings a week." "And will you accept?" She looked at him. "Would it be a security risk?" "Yes," he said bluntly, "but not an unmanageable one." He paused. "You should accept." This was the second pivot. He was not just allowing her a life outside the penthouse. He was encouraging it, despite the increased complication it brought to his security dilemma. His protection was no longer about mitigating a liability. It was about enabling her. She began teaching the following week. Kim insisted Park stay inside the building during her classes, a visible shadow. Her students, particularly a fierce 13-year-old girl named Zoe with a prosthetic leg, became her new reason to get up in the morning. She was rebuilding piece by piece. And Kim watched from a distance. His business with Kang escalated. There were more late-night calls, more tense men in suits. One of Kang's warehouses was seized by customs in a highly publicized raid. The financial news sites speculated about corporate warfare. Maya knew it was more literal than that. The pressure reached its peak when a bouquet of black roses was delivered to the penthouse. The card read in elegant script, "A beautiful bird in a gilded cage is still a bird. Some of us prefer to see them fly free, or not at all." It was signed with a single, stylized K. Kim's face went pale, then terrifyingly calm. He made a single call. "The offer is rescinded. Proceed with the containment protocol." He turned to Maya. "You will not go to the center tonight. You will not leave this apartment until I say so." "What's happening?" Kang has made his move. He is no longer negotiating for territory. He is sending a message about consequences. His phone buzzed. He read the message and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "He knows about momentum. He knows about your class schedule. The roses were not sent here. They were delivered to the front desk at the community center, addressed to you." The threat had just crossed the last boundary. It was no longer aimed at Kim through her. It was aimed directly at her new, fragile life. The safe haven he had helped her find was now a target. "What is containment protocol?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chill in her veins. "It means I end this, tonight." His gaze was fierce, protective, and full of a violence she had only suspected. "Park will take you to a secure location. You will go with him and you will follow his instructions exactly." "And you?" He said, slipping a watch onto his wrist, a timepiece that looked more like a piece of tactical equipment. "Am going to pay Mr. Kang a visit. He needs to understand that some lines, once crossed, erase the map entirely." He turned to leave, but she caught his arm. The contact was electric. "Kim, don't." She wasn't sure what she was asking. "Don't go. Don't kill him. Don't become the monster he claims you're not." He covered her hand with his own, a brief, crushing pressure. "This is the world I built, Maya. Sometimes, to protect what matters, you must remind people why they were afraid of the dark in the first place." He left then, flanked by 2 of his most serious men. Maya was bundled into a waiting SUV with Park. As they pulled away from the curb, she saw a second convoy of black vehicles merge into traffic, heading in the opposite direction. She didn't know where she was being taken. She didn't know if the man who had become her unlikely anchor would return the same man, or if the violence he was walking into would finally extinguish the fragile light she'd seen in him during the blackout. The only thing she knew for certain was that the gilded cage was gone. She was in the open air now, and it was full of storm. The safe house was a modern fortress on the Hudson, but the first thing Park did was sweep it for devices. What he found wasn't a bug. It was a note written in Korean tucked behind a light switch. It said, "The bird is already in the cage. We are the keepers now." Park's face, normally impassive, went pale. He immediately drew his weapon. "We're leaving, now." "What does it mean?" Maya asked, her heart hammering. "It means this location was compromised before we arrived," Park said, hustling her toward the door. "It means someone close to Mr. Kim provided this address. The betrayal was inside Kim's inner circle." They sped back into the night, destination unknown. Park made a call, speaking in rapid, urgent Korean. Maya caught the word mole and the name Choi. Mr. Choi, the man who had hired her. The realization was a cold splash of water. Her employment hadn't been a random act of mercy. She had been placed. Meanwhile, Kim arrived at a waterfront warehouse in Red Hook. Kang Min-suk was waiting, flanked by 6 men. He was an elegant man in his 50s, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Kim Jun SSI," he said pleasantly. "You received my flowers." "Your theatrics are beneath you, Kang," Kim replied, his voice flat. "You wanted a meeting. We are meeting." "I wanted your compliance. The flowers were a reminder of what's at stake." Kang gestured, and a tablet was produced. On the screen was live security footage from the Momentum Center's lobby. It was empty, but the timestamp was current. A beautiful facility. So many vulnerable people coming and going. Kim's control wavered for a second, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "If you touch that place." "Why would I touch it?" Kang interrupted, feigning innocence. "Accidents happen near construction sites all the time. A gas leak, a fire." He leaned forward. "Your sentimentality has made you predictable, June. And in our business, predictability is a terminal condition. Sign over the shipping lane contracts. All of them. Do it now, and your dancer and her little rehab project remain untouched." This was the play. Not to kill Kim, but to strip him of the legitimate business fronts that laundered his money and gave him influence. To bankrupt him and leave him as just another street boss, vulnerable to being swallowed whole. Kang wasn't just taking territory, he was dismantling an empire. Back in the circling car, Park received another call. He listened, then cursed softly. "Change of plan," he told Maya. "Mr. Kim's meeting is a trap. Kang has men positioned to hit his operations downtown the moment he gives the signal. We're going to the secondary command center." They arrived at a nondescript office building in Koreatown. The room inside was a hive of quiet activity, filled with monitors and a handful of Kim's most trusted tech operatives. On one screen, Maya saw the feed from the warehouse. She watched Kim stand alone before Kang's small army. "Can he hear us?" she asked. One of the techs shook his head. "Comms are jammed at that location. We have eyes only." They watched as Kim appeared to consider Kang's ultimatum. He asked for the tablet, presumably to review the contracts. As he scrolled, he subtly angled the device. The tech operator zoomed in. "He's typing," the tech whispered. "It's not the contract, it's a command code." Kim was using the tablet's keyboard to send an encrypted signal. The command was received in the control room. The operator read it aloud, disbelief in his voice. "Protocol Phoenix, but that's a full asset burn. It means he's giving the order to dismantle everything," Park finished, his voice heavy. "The bank accounts, the shell companies, the inventory. He's self-destructing his entire operation before Kang can take it." On screen, Kang grew impatient. "Your theatrics, June, sign." Kim looked up from the tablet, his expression unreadable. "The contracts are irrelevant. The assets they reference no longer exist." It took a moment for the words to land. Kang's smile vanished. He snatched the tablet back, barking orders to his men to verify. The confirmation came quickly. Kim Jun had just vaporized tens of millions of dollars in holdings. He was now, on paper, a man with nothing but the clothes on his back and a penthouse he likely couldn't afford. Kang's rage was instant and terrifying. "You arrogant fool, do you think this saves her?" He pulled a phone from his pocket, ready to give the order for the attack on Momentum. but Kim was faster. In a movement too quick to follow, he disarmed the man nearest him and had the gun pressed to Kang's temple. The order to burn my assets also sent a different set of coordinates to every federal and state law enforcement agency with an open file on you, Kim said, his voice deadly calm. The warehouse in Newark where you keep your ledgers, the condo where you house your mistresses, the safety deposit boxes in Zurich. They are being raided as we speak. You have nothing left to threaten me with. This was the countermove no one saw coming. Kim hadn't gone for a violent takeover. He had mutually assured destruction, leveraging Kang's own greed and meticulous record-keeping against him. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to create a stalemate where the only move left was to walk away. The revelation stunned the control room into silence. Maya watched, her hand over her mouth. He had burned his empire to ash to protect her, to create a clean slate. But Kang, cornered and ruined, started to laugh, a thin, hysterical sound. You think you've won? You have no idea, do you? Choi didn't just give me your safe houses. He looked directly into the camera as if he knew they were watching. He told me why you really hired the girl. It wasn't pity, June. It was penance. The screen went black as the feed was cut, but the words hung in the air. Penance. In the sudden silence of the control room, all eyes turned to Maya. Her mind raced, scrambling over every interaction, every strange kindness. The compression sleeve, the physical therapist, the encouragement. Had it all been guilt? Park's phone rang, a different shrill tone. He answered, listened, and his shoulders slumped. The warehouse, he said. There was an incident. Police scanners are reporting a shooting. Multiple suspects down. Mr. Kim's status is unknown. The floor seemed to drop out from under Maya. The man who had just erased his life for her might be dead, and his last act had been shadowed by a secret she didn't understand. We need to go, Park said, but his conviction was gone. No, Maya said, her voice surprisingly steady. Take me to the penthouse. Miss Reed, it's not secure. He told me never to approach his private office, she said, a plan forming from sheer desperation. If there are answers, they're there. If he's gone, then Kang's men will be coming for what's left. We need to know what he meant. What penance? Against his better judgment, Park agreed. The drive back to the tower was tense. The building lobby was swarming with police. A uniformed officer stopped them. Are you residents? There's been a reported incident. We're with the security team for the penthouse owner, Park interjected smoothly, flashing a badge that looked official. We need to secure the premises. They were allowed up. The penthouse was eerily as she'd left it. Maya went straight to the forbidden door. It was locked by a keypad. She tried Kim's birthday based on the date on the employment forms. Nothing. She tried the date she'd started working. Nothing. Think, what did he value? What was his true code? On a whim, she entered the date of her accident, November 12th. The light turned green. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Her blood ran cold. She pushed the door open. The office was spacious, dominated by a large desk and a wall of monitors now dark. But it was the other wall that stopped her breath. It wasn't a wall of weapons or money. It was a case, like in a museum. And inside, arranged with care, were dance memorabilia. A worn pair of point shoes autographed. A framed playbill from Giselle at the Met. A photo of a radiant, dark-skinned ballerina taking a bow. A woman Maya recognized as Eva Lawson, a legendary principal dancer who had tragically died in a hit-and-run over a decade ago. On the desk was a single, older file folder. Maya opened it with trembling hands. Inside were newspaper clippings about Eva Lawson's death, police reports stating the driver had fled the scene and was never found, and then a personal handwritten letter in Korean with an English translation paperclipped to it. It was from Kim Jun's father, dated a month before his own death. The key line was highlighted. The matter with the dancer is settled. The driver has been compensated to leave the country. The Lawson family will receive no justice. This is the price of our business. Remember this weight, June. It is yours to carry now. The final piece was a recent photograph. It was of Maya, taken before her accident, leaving the Met after a performance. She was laughing, her face alive with joy. Written on the back in Kim's precise script, E. Lawson, 2009, M. Reed, 2023, the debt transfers. The truth was a physical blow. Her accident hadn't been random. The drunk driver who hit her had been paid by Kim June's father's organization years ago to escape justice for killing Eva Lawson. Kim had discovered this inherited sin. Hearing Maya, protecting her, helping her rebuild, it wasn't random kindness or growing affection. It was atonement for his family's crime. She was a living, breathing line item on a balance sheet of guilt. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Every tender moment, every silent gift, was recontextualized into something cold and transactional. He hadn't been watching her private struggle out of fascination. He'd been monitoring his investment in his own redemption. Park appeared in the doorway, his phone to his ear. He lowered it, his expression grim. They found him. He's alive, but he's in surgery. Gunshot wound to the chest. It's touch and go. Maya looked from the damning file in her hands to the case of Eva Lawson's memories. The man who might be dying in a hospital had saved her life, jump-started her recovery, and given her a new purpose. But he had done it all for the wrong reasons. He had built a beautiful, gilded cage of guilt around them both. She closed the file. The tears that came now weren't of wonder or hope. They were of profound, disorienting betrayal. Yet beneath the shock, a fiercer emotion sparked. He had still chosen to burn his empire today, not for his father's penance, but for her. In that final moment, facing Kang, his choice had been for the woman she was now, not for the ghost he was trying to appease. The script had flipped completely. She was no longer a victim of circumstance or a beneficiary of charity. She was the holder of a terrible secret, and the only person who could decide what the man in that hospital room truly deserved. The game wasn't over. It had just become entirely hers to play. She didn't go to the hospital that night. She went to a brownstone in Harlem, to the home of Eleanor Lawson, Eva's now elderly mother, with the file folder in her hands. It was the hardest walk of her life, harder than her first steps after the accident. She confessed everything: her employment, the discovered truth, the man fighting for his life who carried this secret. Eleanor Lawson listened in silence, her eyes on the faded photo of her daughter. When Maya finished, the old woman reached out and took her hand. "Child," she said, her voice soft with a grief worn smooth by time, "I have known a version of this for years, that the man who killed my Eva was paid to disappear. The police stopped returning my calls. I learned to live with the unknown." She squeezed Maya's fingers. "But you have been given a terrible choice. To condemn a man for his father's sin, or to forgive him for trying in his broken way to make amends. Do not let his guilt become your prison, too." The words were a liberation. The penance hadn't been just Kim's. By holding his secret, Maya had begun to shoulder the weight herself. Eleanor's forgiveness, offered to a stranger in her living room, broke the chain. Maya went to the hospital. Kim June had survived the surgery but was in a medically induced coma. The doctor said the next 48 hours were critical. She sat by his bed in the sterile, quiet room. The powerful, controlled man was reduced to a collection of wires and slow, mechanical breaths. She didn't know what to feel. With Park's help, she managed the aftermath. Kang Min-suk was in federal custody, facing a mountain of financial and racketeering charges thanks to Kim's data dump. Choi, the traitorous lieutenant, had vanished, likely fleeing the country. The empire was indeed ashes, but the legitimate shell, the property holdings, the venture capital fund, remained fragile but intact. It turned out the Phoenix Protocol had a failsafe. It only burned the illegal assets. The legitimate ones were shielded. Kim had left himself a way back. For 2 weeks, Maya became the quiet administrator of Kim June's remaining world. She worked with his few loyal lawyers. She paid the penthouse staff, assuring them their jobs were secure. And she went to Momentum, teaching her classes. The work grounded her. Her students, especially Zoe, became her anchor to reality. "You seem different, Miss Maya," Zoe said one day. "Sadder but stronger." "It's called growing up, Zoe," Maya replied with a tired smile. "It hurts." On the 15th day, Kim woke up. He was weak, his voice a rasp. His first lucid word, blinking against the light, was her name, Maya. She was there reading a report on the Foundation's legal structure. She set it down. "You're awake." "The file," he croaked, his eyes filled with a pain that had nothing to do with his wound. "You know." "I know." He closed his eyes, a tear escaping down his temple. "Then you should leave. Take whatever you need from the accounts. The penthouse is yours if you want it. Just go." This was the moment of payoff. The central question from the hook, why was he watching her, what did he want, was answered in full. It had started as penance. It had become something else, but the foundation was poisoned. Maya didn't leave. She pulled her chair closer. "Your mother," she said quietly. "Eleanor Lawson, I met her." His eyes flew open, shock and fear in them. "She forgave you, Kim. More than that, she forgave me. She said not to let your father's crime define our lives." Maya took a deep breath. "You hired me because of Eva, but you burned your empire for me, not for her, for the woman I am now. I need to know which debt you're still paying." The silence in the room was total, broken only by the beep of the heart monitor. He struggled to find words. "At first, it was only for her, a ghost. I saw your picture, read about your accident. It felt like fate offering me a chance to balance the scales." He winced, shifting slightly. "But then you were here. You were real. You fought for every inch of yourself. You built something beautiful from the wreckage. The penance became irrelevant. I just wanted to see you win." It was the truth, stark and unadorned. The origins were ugly, but the evolution was real. He had crossed the line from guilt to care, and in the end, he had chosen her over everything his father had built. "Kang is finished," Maya said, changing the subject to give them both space. "Your legitimate holdings are secure. The penthouse is safe." "It's not my home," he said, looking at her. "It was a fortress, a beautiful cage. I don't want to go back to a cage." "Then what do you want?" He was silent for a long time. "The foundation you were reading about. The Eva Lawson Foundation for Performing Artists in Trauma. I started the paperwork a month ago. I want to build that. I want it to be my mother's legacy, and," he hesitated, "if you would consider it yours too, not as an employee, as a partner." The surprising detail wasn't the foundation's existence, but its name. He had already been moving toward redemption before the final crisis, dedicating it to the woman his family had destroyed. The gesture was pure, unsullied by the recent chaos. Maya looked at this broken, vulnerable man who had given her back her life, even if for the wrong reasons at the start. The anger had faded, burned away in the long hours at his bedside, replaced by a complicated, profound understanding. They were both survivors of different crashes, trying to rebuild. "I have a condition," she said. "Anything. We start completely new. No more secrets. No more watching from the shadows. If we do this, we do it in the light as equals." A faint, genuine smile touched his lips, the first she'd ever seen that wasn't guarded or cynical. "That sounds like an excellent business proposal." Recovery was slow. 3 months later, Kim was discharged. He did not return to the penthouse. Instead, they went to a spacious loft in Dumbo that Maya had found, with room for a small home studio and views of the bridge. It was a fresh start in a neutral space. The Eva Lawson Foundation launched with a substantial endowment. Maya was named Director of Programming. Her first hire was Elijah from Momentum to oversee expansion. The press release made no mention of Kim Jun's past, only his philanthropic present. One evening, as autumn painted the city in gold, Kim found Maya in her studio, moving through a slow, adaptive choreography she was creating for Zoe. He watched from the doorway, no longer through a security feed but present. When she finished, he held out a simple black folder. A project requires our attention and soul. Site selection for the Foundation's first International Community Center. It would require a trip, a long one. She opened the folder. Inside were 2 first-class tickets, itineraries, and beneath them 2 new passports. Her eyes met his. "This isn't a cage, Maya," he said softly, answering her unspoken question. "It's a bridge, if you want to cross it with me." This was the full-circle payoff to the hook. The woman on the tarmac, thinking she was being dismissed, holding back tears. The man extending not a termination but a new beginning. The truth was, he had been offering her a way forward from the very first day, even if he didn't understand why himself. She looked from the tickets to his face, which held not the stoic mask of the Mafia boss, but the hopeful, uncertain expression of a man who had lost everything and found something better. The tears that welled in her eyes now were not of sorrow or fear, but of acceptance and the dizzying thrill of a future uncharted. She took his hand, the one holding the passports. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "Let's go build a bridge." The private jet awaited them not as a symbol of hollow luxury, but as a tool for a shared purpose. The Korean Mafia boss and the former dancer stepped onto the tarmac together, not into a gilded cage, but into the wide-open sky, the ghosts of the past finally acknowledged, and finally laid to rest. Their story asks us a difficult question. Can a love built on a foundation of guilt ever be truly clean, or does the beauty come from building something new atop the ruins? Kim Jun and Maya Reed chose the latter. They understood that transformation isn't about erasing the past, but about integrating its lessons into a stronger future. The Eva Lawson Foundation now operates 3 community centers in 2 countries. Zoe, Maya's first student, recently earned a scholarship to Juilliard's adaptive dance program. The gilded cage of the penthouse was sold. The proceeds funded the first of many scholarships. We often view people like Kim Jun as monsters, defined solely by their worst actions or their family's sins. And we view people like Maya as victims, defined by what was taken from them. But their journey reveals a more complex truth. We are not frozen in the moment of our worst tragedy or our gravest mistake. We are the sum of our choices that follow. He chose to atone, then chose to protect, then chose to rebuild with her. She chose to survive, then chose to understand, then chose to build with him. Their power wasn't in their titles, the Mafia boss, the star dancer, but in their resilience. The most dangerous man in the room became the most vulnerable. The woman who lost everything became the architect of a new legacy. So the next time you see a story that seems too simple, a villain, a victim, a clean-cut happy ending, look closer. The most compelling human dramas unfold in the gray space between wrong and right, between penance and purpose, between the prison we're given and the freedom we build with our own hands. If you found yourself rooting for them, even when the truth was ugly, then you understand that complexity. You're the reason we tell stories like this, to remind us that change is possible, that redemption is real, and that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with a single broken step. For more stories that explore the shadows and the light within us, hit subscribe. Let us know in the comments what moment surprised you most. Thank you for watching.